All right, so we are still waiting for these to dry, but what I wanted to mention is I am going to glue on my 3D die cut or 3D embossed background. So I'm adding glue to it. Has to be a liquid glue here because of all the bumps in dimension. So I am sticking it to the front of my card. This one I decided to do a little bit more dark purple to bring out some of the purple tones in there. But you can choose whatever card you want. I typically will choose one of the flower colors. Now because there's so much lumpy bumpy in this die cut or this emboss here, what I'm going to do is put my folder on top of it and then something with weight to hold it down while it dries, and I will let it dry completely. If I don't do this, you can tell some of it wanted to pull up and it's not going to dry if it's pulled up. So I want to make sure that it's pushed down evenly, and by putting my folder on it and then putting something that has some weight, I'm not going to put a brick or something super heavy because I don't want to crush that emboss. It's going to hold it in place while it is drying. So I'll see you after that is dried and that is dried. All right, my die cuts are completely dry, and so is my embossing on the front of the card. So what I tend to do, so here's the sample. So the colors are a little bit different, and that just happens. Sometimes you're a little bit heavier with one shade than the other, and if I wanted to, if I wasn't happy with how this is right now, I could go back in, re-wet the whole thing and add some more color to it, but I'm going to leave it. So what I like to do is lay things out without adding adhesive first. And then I will start to slowly glue everything together. And I like to keep that big flower right where I want it to be, just so that I can see how to position the other ones. Some of the watercolor may have seeped underneath, so you want to make sure you're positioning it right, because if you happen to get some glue onto that watercolor paint and it transfers here, you're going to be a little bit more limited with how you can move your die cuts in order to assemble the card, because chances are you'll have a little bit of paint that has transferred onto your background. There we go. And these have turned out quite flat. If by chance they were not very flat and had some dimension to them, you could glue them all together and then put the embossing folder back over it and weight it down to dry. I don't think I need to do that for this particular layer, just because they ended up drying fairly flat. My glue is clearly towards the end of its bottle because it's not wanting to cooperate. So I can pull some of those pieces out a little bit if I want them to be a little bit more visible. There we go. And I don't mind if there's a little bit of curling, but I definitely want to make sure that it has some good contact with that embossing folder background and that it's going to glue down properly. So then I typically go into my little stash of sentiments. I'm going to add that to the front of the card, and I typically use some, where did I put it? 3D foam dots to do that. I don't know where I've put them. So I think instead, this one I'm going to glue it flat down. And the die cuts are turning up just from the moisture from the glue. So I am going to, the card is completely finished, but I am going to put this on here and then put the jar on there so that it dries completely flat. So I'll see you in the next video where we're going to start the next card. All right, so completely ignore what I just said. I realized after turning the camera off that I have to add the stickles to the flowers. Now you could leave them like this, absolutely. There's nothing wrong with it. But I thought by adding some platinum stickles, it just tied in the gold embossing. And I like the platinum because it's got a bit of a silver undertone. My least favorite color is yellow, and therefore my least favorite metal is gold, especially really yellow golds. but I like the platinum because, like I said, it's got a silver undertone to it, so it's not too yellowy. So put the Stickles on, and then you do need to let that set aside to dry, probably about an hour for what the amount that we put on. Typically, if I put Stickles on something, I go and I put it out of my reach so that I can't possibly ruin what I've just created. So there is our first card completed, both with a different color card base, just to show you how different colors pull out different things from the flowers. We'll see you in the next card.